Have you ever known someone who's consistently can show up as someone who is nice and then at the drop of a dime, flip that personality to become cold and callous? In this video, I want to share 5 ways that you'll see this Jekyll and Hyde personality come through in any relationship with a narcissist. And then I want to talk about 3 important things that you need to know about what's really going on here. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Common Ego community. My name is Christina. On this channel, we talk about emotional abuse, spirituality, and self-development. Today, we're talking about the Jekyll and Hyde personality that I know you have seen if you have encountered a narcissist, at least if you've gotten up close and personal with a narcissist. This is something that they can't hide, and for reasons that we will discuss more towards the end of this video. But for right now, I want to share 5 ways that this is going to show up in your relationship. And if you've had a relationship with a narcissist, I want to know if you have seen any of these or more. So let us know in the comments below. And for those of you who think you may be in a relationship with a narcissist, I have a free guide that might help you start to sort things out. In this guide, I talk about the phases of a relationship with a narcissist, and there are checklists for each phase that can help you identify really what's going on in your own relationship. On to the characteristics of this Jekyll and Hyde personality and how it shows up in a relationship. So you'll notice that there are almost 2 faces to this person, to this personality. Sometimes there's the public facing image, and then there's the private image, and those 2 are completely different. It's always the Dr. Jekyll who's the nice guy who shows up in the public facing image. Or usually. And Dr. Hyde is the abusive monster that sometimes shows up at home. But when things happen in that way, it's kind of a little bit easier to understand how someone can be this way, right? Because if someone is putting up a front in public and that's not really who they are, and then you're seeing their true self in private, they're not hiding who they are at all, you can kind of understand how someone could become that kind of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But the part of this that's really difficult to understand when you're in it is how anyone could be one way with you one minute and a completely different person the next minute. It's like this person has 2 personalities. And now I say 2 faces of this personality because sometimes you'll even notice that it shows up as almost like this person has a different face when they're in that Mr. Hyde moment. I've heard this a lot from you guys, and it has a lot to do with the person's eyes. There's a change that you see in their eyes that is not something that you would expect to see in anyone, really. And usually this comes up in moments where you're witnessing narcissistic rage. And when I have been in those moments, I can tell you that yes, I have seen changes to the other person's eyes, but also to their entire face. It's hard to explain, but it does kind of almost sometimes look like they become a different person. And this, I think, is part of the reason why people refer to narcissists as, demonic or that they are possessed. Because when you see this type of change in somebody, it's hard to understand. So the next characteristic of this Jekyll and Hyde personality is that there's complete and total contrast between the person who they were one minute and the person who they are the next minute. It's like that they change. And they can go from seemingly having like a normal demeanor, not angry, maybe not happy, but not angry, just kind of status quo, right? To going to extreme rage. And it's not always for a reason that you would expect. Unfortunately, it is very easy for a narcissist to experience an injury, and this can set them off in that way. And I do want to be clear that what we're talking about here isn't your typical anger. It is way out of proportion for the situation, and it goes from 0 to about 1,000 very, very fast. And so that's the narcissistic rage part of it. But this Jekyll and Hyde personality shows up in other ways too. When you're in a relationship with a narcissist, sometimes you can feel like that person actually loves you. And for no apparent reason, it can switch just like that. And not only do you then question whether they love you, but you question whether they even like you. And you're not even sure what happened there. And then it switches back. So the third thing that you'll notice with this Jekyll and Hyde personality is that it really kind of does almost feel like multiple personalities. And you may even question that. I know that when I was in a relationship like this, I had other people question it all the time. They would come up with all of these ideas that, maybe this person does have multiple personalities, or, maybe something else is going on here. And I always knew that that wasn't the case. But to be honest, I didn't know what was the case. I really didn't know what was going on. If you've watched this channel for a while, you probably know that I had a relationship with somebody who fits the description of a covert narcissist. And at the time, this was years ago, at the time, there was not a lot of information out there about that type of narcissist, which is really a vulnerable narcissist. Everything about narcissism at that time described a very grandiose person, grandiose narcissism, really, somebody who's charismatic and everybody loves them, and they seem to attract people to their energy, right? And this wasn't the case for me. So that the Jekyll and Hyde personality was a description that I used back then, even though I knew nothing about narcissism, and I knew nothing about really what was behind the Jekyll and Hyde personality. So the fourth characteristic of a relationship with somebody who has this Jekyll and Hyde personality is that you have no idea what's going to set them off. You don't know what's going to bring Mr. Hyde to come out and play. And because of that, you end up walking on eggshells. Now, there may be some things that are triggering to this person, and so you avoid them. You dance around those topics. But this is somebody who really is very moody, and you never know what's going to set them off. And again, aligned with that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde personality, they could seem to be fine one minute and then so not fine the next minute. And unfortunately, it is this behavior, this intermittent reinforcement, that leads to the trauma bond. I have a few videos on that, and I'll link to the playlist in the description. So if you want to get more information on the trauma bond, what it is, go ahead and check out that playlist. So the fifth thing you may notice in a relationship with this Jekyll and Hyde narcissist is that you might start to feel like you're the only person who sees Mr. Hyde. Now, this is going to vary with, different situations and different family dynamics, but because narcissists often isolate their victims, it can feel like you're the only person who ever sees this bad side of this person. And it can also make you feel like somehow it's your fault that you've brought this out in them. And through gaslighting and abuse, they will encourage that line of thought. They will encourage you to feel like it's your fault. And they will probably even tell you that it's your fault that they are behaving the way they are. But if you're dealing with this now, or if you've dealt with this before, I want to tell you that this is not typical behavior. This is someone who cannot regulate their own emotions, and so they're doing it through you. And that is not something that could ever be your fault. Yes, none of us are perfect, and yes, maybe sometimes we get angry and we trigger people intentionally. We do things that maybe we, in hindsight, shouldn't have done, but that person's response is not your fault. The fact that they cannot regulate their own emotions is not your fault. And so that's kind of the transition into the things that you need to know about what's going on behind the scenes. That is the first one, that they cannot regulate their own emotions. And really, at their core, narcissists have a lot of shame that they're covering up. And whenever anything touches on that shame, they are going to rage out in whatever way that person rages out. So from the surface, this person appears to be an adult, right? Narcissism is not diagnosed in children. So if you're dealing with a narcissist, you think that you're dealing with an adult. But the problem is that this adult never learned to regulate their own emotions. Instead, They built up a false persona and they have a false sense of self. This is what protects them from feeling that shame. And really, what's buried beneath is a lot of self-loathing. These are not happy people. And this is what leads them to behaviors like devaluation and discard and gaslighting, all the abusive stuff. So the next thing that I want you to know about this Jekyll and Hyde personality is that this is something that can be obvious if you know what you're looking for. And the reason why I want to make this point is because, like I said earlier, it can be easy to kind of blame yourself for their reactions and their overreactions because they're so extreme. You think, you must be at fault. You must have had something to do with this, right? But if you look at this person, you will see that they are a walking contradiction. So this is somebody who projects confidence, yet they don't act like somebody who's confident, right? Somebody who's confident would be so comfortable building other people up, not tearing them down. But that's exactly what narcissists do. They love to tear people down because they're not truly confident. Also, if this person wants you to believe that they are happy and content with who they are in their lives, then that would be a person who would exude happiness. You would feel happy around them because happiness is contagious. Someone who's happy does not try to change the whole mood of a room and bring everyone down. Why would they? So if you look at the way this person behaves and the way they want you to think they are, there is always a really, really big contrast. And so if you're thinking that it's you and not them, or that you play some sort of big role in this, look at the type of person that you're dealing with, because this is a Jekyll and Hyde personality here too. This type of contrast may or may not show up in the normal versus angry monster, but it shows up nonetheless. Who they say they are and who they want you to think they are is not who they really are. So the whole Jekyll and Hyde thing kind of makes sense. There is contrast throughout this person. And the last thing that I want you to know about the Jekyll and Hyde narcissist is that they know something's up. They know something's wrong. They know they're not quite like other people. And how do we know this? Because they spend a lot of time pretending. They look at other people and how they behave, how people show empathy, and they try to mimic that to show empathy. They try to do things that they think they're supposed to do in whatever situation, and it's not really genuine. So they know something's up there. But again, in dealing with narcissism, they're not going to really dig into that. They're not going to allow themselves to believe that there's a problem with them. So they are going to project that out to you. And furthermore, a lot of the negative traits of their personality, the negative behaviors, they're going to see you as having them and doing them. This essentially is projection, but they are consumed with rage and shame. They can't imagine what it's like not to be carrying that around. And so they assume that the same thing is going on with everyone and everyone is going to lie, cheat, and steal to get their way. So I hope that helps you understand the Jekyll and Hyde personality. And if you found this video helpful, I know you're going to find this other video helpful. In this video, I talk about the walking contradiction that is the narcissist. And this will also help you get a deeper understanding of that Jekyll and Hyde personality. So I'm going to link to that video right here. And as always, if you like this video, if you found it helpful, please feel free to share, like, and subscribe. These things do help the video and the channel, and I'll see you next time.